Video 21 of our Flipped History series of videos. This video has two learning intentions. The first learning intention is to describe the role of the Indian Department during the 7 Years' War and during the period following the end of the war. And I can indicate the role of the Indian Department as the first success criteria. The second learning intention is to determine the causes and consequences of Pontiac's revolt or rebellion. And the success criteria is that I can determine the causes and consequences of Pontiac's rebellion. After the surrender of the French with the capitulation of Montreal in 1760, the British were left with an intriguing issue: what to do with the Aboriginal people that the French had been allied with. At first, the British were keen to continue the policies of the French. That meant that giving them gifts, especially gifts of food and ammunition for their guns, and this was the policy that was brought about by the Indian Department. The Indian Department was created in 1755 as a way for the British to try to mend fences and gain allies amongst the various native peoples in their territories. They knew that the French had been very successful at forging these alliances, and they wanted to do so as well. However, the British general in charge, Geoffrey Amherst, did not want to continue the policy of giving gifts and ammunition. He also wanted to ban the trade in alcohol. As well, the Aboriginal people were angry that the French had given their territory to the British. They, with the peace treaty of 1763, the Treaty of Paris. So they were angry and they wanted to rebel. They saw another cause that they saw was that the English were beginning to move settlers into the frontier. So under an Ottawa war chief named Pontiac, the Aboriginals of the Illinois and Ohio valleys started a rebellion in 1763 against the British. Initially, the rebellion was quite successful. They attacked settlements, they attacked and took 10 forts, including prominent forts like Fort Detroit. There were a number of different reactions amongst the British. The British brought soldiers into the interior, but Geoffrey Amherst failed to see the threat and how grave the threat of Pontiac's rebellion was. Around Fort Pitt, which had been laid siege in present-day Pittsburgh, there was a plan to give smallpox to the natives. Geoffrey Amherst and Colonel Bouquet exchanged letters saying that this was a plan that Amherst wanted. Bouquet, however, wasn't immune to smallpox and didn't want to get the disease himself. Nevertheless, unbeknownst to him, others at the fort conspired to give smallpox-infected blankets to the natives. Now, it is accepted that smallpox ravaged through the native nations of the interior and caused many, many deaths. However, historians now feel that this way of transmitting disease through the infected blankets, as despicable as this tactic was, using biological warfare, wouldn't have been an effective way of doing it. Rather, they think that the Aboriginals gained smallpox through attacking villages and coming into contact with settlers that already had the disease. Smallpox, there was an epidemic of smallpox in North America that began in 1755, and it's very conceivable that this would have spread to the interior. As well, the British Indian Department became more involved in the process in trying to find peace. Under the administration of Sir William Johnson, he wanted to set a fixed price on furs, a licensing system, and to restrict trade to certain forts. However, the licensing system never really came into effect, and the trade really wasn't restricted to certain forts. In fact, the military governors of Montreal, Trois-Rivières, and Quebec established a free trade system. The peace was finally signed in 1765, and Pontiac made the point that the French had never conquered them, so their territory could never be handed over to the English. And in fact, in the Royal Proclamation of 1763, which we'll look at in greater detail later, it reserved the lands for the native peoples of the interior and prevented English settlers from moving further west. And it also established a nation-to-nation relationship between the Aboriginal people and the British Crown. Well, thanks for watching. As you finish up your summary, I want you to consider the following essential questions. Were the British the friendly conquerors? And to what extent do we owe allegiance or loyalty to our government?